All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today regarding visiting the lecture program for DMI Sinjon, the Baptist University, Malawi. Welcome to the Honorable Miss Beatrice Diphar Chimbizi as lecturer social with us today, and also to all participants today. Today's session is being live streamed on the Universitas STEKOM YouTube channel, and now I will read our agenda for this afternoon today. First, we will start Ms. Beatrice Diphar Chimbizi as class presentation on the topic Understanding the Scope of Disaster-Related Intervention in Malawi. We will continue with a Q&A session for all participants in the next sections. So if you have any question for the speaker, please add them to the chat or you can raise your hand. Your question will be answered after the presentation. And yeah, let's start our class today for Miss Beatrice Chimbizi. This time is yours. Thank you. Hello, Miss Beatrice. Are you hear me? Hello, Miss Beatrice. Are you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, you can start it now.
Okay. Can you beam my presentation? Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Beatrice Chimbizi, a lecturer, Department of Social Work. Our topic today is to understand the scope of disaster-related intervention in Malawi. So you can see there's a picture of a certain disaster that took place last year in one of the cities in Malawi, that's Blantyre. So we can say Malawi is a highly vulnerable country. The reason behind it is because of the location of it. It's located along the Great African Rift Valley. There is large population growth that also increases its vulnerability to disasters. There is unsustainable development, unsustainable urbanization, or I can say unsustainable development, as well as poor settlement patterns. When you look at the buildings of Malawian citizens, the buildings are weak. These buildings, we're talking of infrastructures. There is lack of access to information as well as knowledge about disasters. The climate here is variability as well as there is environmental degradation. So all these are putting Malawi to be susceptible, or I can say vulnerable, to disasters. But before we start discussing about impacts, by the end of this lecture, one, we need to know the definition of disaster. We need to know the types of disasters that affect people here in Malawi. We also need to understand interventions that Malawi has put in place in order to mitigate the impacts of disasters. We need to know Hello?
Yeah. Okay, you can
hear
continue.
me?
Yeah, okay.
All right. We need to know the impacts of disasters as well. So let's start with defining what a disaster is. What term of a disaster is something that is serious. It is a serious event that disrupts the functioning of a community or a society in general. This disruption comes in because of man-made as well as natural events. So for us to understand what man-made disasters are, what are natural disasters, because we are saying that there are serious situations that causes destruction of the functioning of a community. You know, communities are supposed to function. When I'm talking of functioning community, we are looking at communities where people are able to do developmental activities, where people are able to interact. So when people stop this because of a certain serious event, that's what we are calling a disaster. So there are two types of disasters. We have natural disaster and man-made disasters. Natural disasters are disasters that occur naturally. Nobody causes them to occur, but by nature, these disasters happen. For example, we have earthquakes, we have flash floods, we have landslides. All these are examples of natural disasters. What about man-made disasters? These are disasters that come in because of man-made activities, human activities. For example, if we cut down trees, the end result is that we are leaving our land bare. And then when rains come, or when heavy rains come, it comes with it and it carries away nutritious soil. And that will also affect our environment. So we can give an example of chemical explosion. This one is a man-made disaster. Think of road accidents. These are man-made disasters because for road accidents to occur, there should be someone who initiated the activity. There should be a careless driver who causes the disaster. So that's man-made disasters. Remember, we're looking at types of disasters, whereby we're saying that there are two types of disasters: natural disasters and man-made disasters. A disaster is a serious disruption of the functioning of a community. I'm proceeding with list of natural and man-made disasters that happen in Malawi. So I'll just list the disaster and year. So here in Malawi, in 2023 February, we had tropical cyclone Freddy. We also had another disaster in 2022 March, whereby we were affected by tropical cyclone Gombe. And in March 2022, as well as December 2015, Malawi was affected by cholera outbreak. There was also a polio outbreak in March 2022. In the same March, Malawi was also affected by tropical storm Anna. So there were strong winds and heavy rains in December 2021. I'm proceeding with list of disasters that had affected Malawi. In 2019, January and April, Malawi was affected by tropical cyclone Kenneth, and we had drought in 2018 and 2022. Malawi was also affected by armyworms in 2017, as well as there was food insecurity in 2015 and 2017, as well as 2012 and 2014. While in January 2013, we had floods. So these are some of the examples of natural and man-made disasters that have affected Malawi in the past 10 years. As you can see, there's a picture of people receiving maize and others are just harvesting their maize. This picture is just showing us how food insecurity in Malawi was in 2015 to 17, as well as 2012 and 2014. So according to World Food Program, about 264 million of Malawians were affected by food insecurity. So you can see the number is just huge. That means this disaster really affected a lot of people in 2015 to 17, as well as 2012 to 2014. So getting back to today's topic, whereby we are looking at related interventions in Malawi, disaster-related interventions in Malawi. But then we need to understand what an intervention is. When talking of intervention, we are looking at the action of becoming intentionally involved in a difficult situation. The reason is to improve or to prevent the disaster from getting worse. So in disaster, in terms of disaster interventions, we are looking at different activities that people take and took, as you can say, or that people intentionally did in order to prevent or to stop disasters from occurring. So what are these interventions? What is it that Malawi is doing to prevent or to stop disasters from occurring? The first intervention is psychosocial care intervention. We can also call it mental health intervention. Why is mental health intervention very important in disaster management? This protects survivors from further harm by reducing psychosocial erosion. It also involves mobilizing resources for those who are most distressed and also keeps families together and facilitates unions with loved ones. It involves coming up with stress management techniques. For example, talking to someone. I can also say counseling is one of an example of psychosocial care interventions. You know, people get stressed, they get traumatized when they are faced with disasters because some of them tend to lose their properties, some of them lose their loved ones. So emotionally, they get affected. These people need this kind of intervention, psychosocial interventions. I will give an example of last year's disaster in Blantyre, whereby a lot of people lost their property. So we had organizations like Care Malawi. We also had an organization of social workers. They went there to provide counseling to these people so that they should accept the situation they are in and be able to cope up with the situation. So psychosocial care intervention is one of the interventions that Malawi is using to help those people that were affected by disaster. Another intervention is social support. So we have social support networks. These are very extremely important for feeling secure and comfortable. So in disaster situation, all these support systems get disrupted. So most people who have experienced the disaster, they're emotional and mentally stressed. As such, they can end up making a hasty decision, hence resulting in negative and bad consequences. So people who have social networks are there to assist in making proper decisions. So when talking of social support, we are also including provision of relief services, provision of homes, food, clothes, and shelter. So this picture is just showing some of the organizations that went to one of the scenes in Blantyre to distribute a relief item. Another intervention is relief intervention. This involves the provision of emergency services and public assistance during or immediately after a disaster. The reason for this intervention is to save lives as well as to reduce health impacts. Another reason is to make sure that the public is safe and such people are able to meet their basic needs. So relief activities can include search and rescue, relocating people to a safer place, provision of food and shelter as well as water. So that's under relief intervention. I'm proceeding with interventions in disaster management here in Malawi. Another intervention is recovery intervention. In terms of recovery intervention, we are looking at programs that go beyond the provision of immediate relief to assist those who have suffered from the impacts of disasters. An example of recovery intervention can include rebuilding infrastructures such as homes, schools, hospitals, health care, as well as rehabilitation. In terms of rehabilitation, we're looking at medical first aid that is given to survivors under a situation. It can be war, it can be disaster, or a sudden unrest. So these are the intervention we're talking about: the building of infrastructures, provision of homes, schools, and the like. Another example is I'll use the same scenario in Blantyre, whereby right now people are still recovering from the last year's disaster. So we still have organizations that are still working in Blantyre to help people to recover from whatever they lost during the disaster. So we looked at interventions, but different interventions in disaster management. But then we cannot discuss about interventions without looking at stakeholders in disaster management, because those people that are providing these interventions are stakeholders in disaster. So who are stakeholders? A stakeholder can be an individual, can be organizations that are interested to help in managing disasters. So one of the stakeholders in disaster management is local government. This local government plays a central role in coordinating and sustaining multiple level or multi-stakeholder platform to promote disaster risk reduction in the region. So the role of government is to effectively engage local communities and citizens with disaster risk reduction activities and link their concerns with government priorities. So another role is to devise and implement innovative tools and techniques for disaster risk reduction, which can replicate elsewhere or scaled up nationwide. So on the term of active engagement of local communities and citizens, we're looking at issues of providing them with trainings, community awareness about disasters, community preparedness. So government is here to prepare our communities whenever they have assessed that the community is going to be affected by disaster. So the government sensitizes the community, empower them, educate them, as well as train them on how they can reduce or maybe stop disasters from occurring. So these are some of the roles of the local government as a stakeholder in disaster management. Another stakeholder are non-government organizations. We have organizations like Save the Children, Malawi Red Cross, and World Vision Malawi, just to mention a few. All these are here in Malawi just to help to reduce or to stop the impact of disasters. So one of the role of stakeholder is to strengthen disaster risk governance, as well as to manage disaster risk by helping strengthening coordination forums composed of relevant stakeholders at the national as well as local level. So in terms of disaster risk governance, this is a group of organizations, government, NGOs, I can say local government, I can say institutions that are working hand in hand to reduce the impacts of disasters. So NGOs are here to strengthen these disaster risk governance so that they should work together, they should coordinate as well as work together in order to reduce the impacts of disasters. And we have donor agencies as examples of stakeholders. So these are donors that come here in Malawi to assist. I'll give an example of United Kingdom during Cyclone Fred case in Blantyre. So they come in with their task force just to help Malawi in recovering from disasters. We also had a team of search and rescue people from UK to Malawi just to assist. We also had a help of funds to help to reconstruct those buildings that were affected by disaster. So those are some of the roles of donor agents in managing disasters. And don't forget social workers. Social workers are also stakeholders when looking at disaster management. These social workers, they help in issues of reconstruction and rehabilitation, as well as counseling. They also help in crisis intervention. All these are the roles of social workers in disaster management. Don't forget I mentioned of search and rescue. As we search and rescue these people to a safer place, we need to provide them with temporary shelters. So social workers are also there to manage these temporary shelters, to manage the welfare of people in these shelters. Are their rights violated? Are they safe? So social workers are there to look at the safety of people in their shelters during disasters. So I can say these are some of the stakeholders in disaster management. I mentioned of social workers as stakeholders. I mentioned of local government. I mentioned of non-governmental organization, as well as donor agents. I'm proceeding with impacts of disasters. Much as we are looking at interventions, ways of helping those people that are affected by disaster, we don't have to forget the impacts of disasters. Disasters leave a very a profound trial suffering to the community. So to work with the disaster-affected community, it is very essential to understand different nature or impacts caused by these disasters. One of the impact is physical impact. So most disasters can result in a lot of physical injuries. So this impact varies depending upon the kind of disaster. We cannot compare the impact of fire outbreak to the impact of road accident. So this physical impact will vary depending on the kind of disaster. So when an impact occurs, we have problems like difficulty in mobility, fracture occurs, hence it affects people economically, socially, as well as emotionally, because someone who is affected by disasters cannot do economical activities. Another impact is social impact. As I said, that someone who is affected by disaster, who is injured, cannot contribute economically, socially as well. Disaster affects people. There is an increase in mental health issue. There's an increase in alcohol misuse. There's also an increase in domestic violence. When we're talking of chronic diseases, also one of the impacts of disasters. There is emotional impact. So any disaster affects people emotionally. The change it brings in lives seems unbearable, and people often feel helpless, hopeless, frustrated in the aftermath of a disaster. So emotionally, people get affected with disaster. In conclusion, we can say that the scope of disaster-related interventions includes networking and coordination. This is basically the connectivity among different line organizations, institutions, communities, individuals, and agencies with a view to sharing information, knowledge, data, and resources for the effective management of disasters. So disasters need to be managed. Ladies and gentlemen, reaching this far, it marks the end of my presentations. If you have questions. Hello.
Yeah, hello. Okay. So thank you for your presentation. So as a reminder to all participants, if you have any question for the speaker, please add them to the chat or you can raise your hand. So here, this has 3 questions that's our students sent it. So first from Rahma, what are the major types of natural disaster that have nice that have impact Malawi in recent years, and what type have been the most significant humanitarian intervention in response to this disaster? Thank you.
All right, recently Malawi was affected by floods. You can say flash floods. So far we had organizations, help from other nations just to reduce the impact of it to people that were affected by disaster. So those are some of the relief measures that we had. Other people were rescued because we had issues of casualties. So these casualties were transferred to central hospitals just to receive some help. And we had first aids on the ground that were assisting these people. But I can say that they have not yet recovered from it, because recovery, as we know, that recovery is a long term. So they are still recovering. We have organizations on ground that are still reconstructing buildings for these people. And yeah, as I said, that they were relocated to a safer place. So it takes time to form a community that will function as normal. So I can say they are still recovering.
All right. Thank you. I hope it will be answered to Mr. Rahma question. So, move to another question. This is from Mr. Nathan. He said that how do various organizations like government, agencies, NGOs, international aid groups coordinate their effort in providing disaster relief and recovery assistance in Malawi, and what challenge exists in ensuring effective collaboration and avoiding duplication of efforts?
Ah, according to my understanding, that question is just looking at interventions by other nations or organizations. So, as I said earlier, that we received funds from various nations. I gave an example of United Kingdom, as well as they bring in their task force. This task force was a search and rescue, just to help our team here to search and rescue those people that were affected by disaster. As well as we have World Vision. We also have CADECOM. All these organizations are working on ground. They are constructing buildings for those people that were affected. Together, they're working hand in hand with Malawi government just to support these people that were affected by disaster.
All right.
And I can say that their help is very effective because we are benefiting from them.
Okay. Thank you for the answer. Okay, we move to, I think that's the last question from Miss Clara. She asks like, beyond immediate emergency relief, what types of long-term disaster preparedness, preparedness and resilience building program are being implemented in Malawi, and how this effort addressing the root cause of vulnerability to disaster in the country? Thank you.
Can you come again? I didn't get.
Sorry.
Come again.
Okay. Uh, beyond immediate emergency relief, what type of long-term disaster preparedness and resilience building program are being implemented in Malawi, and how are these efforts addressing the root cause of vulnerability to disaster in the country? Did you get it?
All right. When talking of long-term disaster preparedness, we can say that right now, DODMA, that's Department of Disaster Management in Malawi, is doing vulnerability assessment or vulnerability analysis, trying to identify some locations or some areas that are vulnerable, that are prone to disasters. So when they are done, they are done with the assessment. They're planning to come up with training, just to train people on how they can respond to these disasters. Maybe, for example, planting of trees. It's a long-term disaster preventive measure. So they are informing us that we need to plant more trees. We need maybe to relocate to a safer place, mentioning of those people who are living along rivers. So they are being forced to locate to a safer place. So these are some of the long-term rehabilitation measures that Malawi is putting in place to stop or maybe to mitigate the impacts of disasters.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you so much for the answer. I think that's all with our question. So thank you so much for your presentation, Miss Beatrice. is that your name, right?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry if I wrong. And thank you so much for eh, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. And I will say, take care. Uh, take care. I'm so sorry. I was so nervous right now. Okay. Okay. First of all, thank you for Miss Beatrice to sharing your knowledge to us and sharing about this topic with us today. And I think that's all for today. I hope we can meet and make a good relationship, good in relation. Thank you. Thank you,
All right. Thank
Miss Beatrice. Nice to see
you.
you.
Nice to see you too. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, so guys, thank you so much for coming. And I think that's all for today. And see you on the visiting lecture program on the next day. Thank you. Bye.